Biblical criticism. Biblical criticism, which can otherwise be termed gospel criticism, in the context of tradition of Jesus. In other words, we could call biblical criticism gospel criticism when considered in the context of tradition of Jesus. Criticism, criticism. In this unit, we shall be concerned with the concept of criticism, the concept of biblical criticism, and its usage in terms of tradition of Jesus. We shall examine various types and the view of a popular Nigerian scholar, Dr. Miracle Aja, who has written extensively on this subject matter in his publication with National Open University of Nigeria, Department of Christian Theology. Now, what is biblical criticism? What is biblical criticism? It is an umbrella term for those methods of studying the Bible that embrace two distinctive perspectives. The concern to avoid dogma and bias by applying a non-sectarian, reason-based judgment, and the reconstruction of history according to contemporary understanding. Two major concerns: to avoid dogma and bias, and the reconstruction of history according to contemporary understanding. Biblical criticism uses the grammar, the structure, the development, and relationship of language to identify such characteristics as the Bible's literary structure, its genre, its context, meaning, authorship, and origin. Listen again. Biblical criticism uses the grammar, structure, development, relationship of language to identify such characteristics as the Bible's literary structure, its genre, its context, meaning, authorship, and origins. Biblical criticism includes a wide range of approaches and questions within four major contemporary methodologies: textual, source, form, and literary criticism. Textual criticism examines the text and its manuscripts to identify what the original text would have said. Contemporary methodologies within which biblical criticism operates. We said the first one is textual criticism, and that it examines the text and its manuscripts to identify what the original text would have said. The second contemporary methodology utilized by biblical criticism is otherwise known as source criticism. This searches the text for evidence of original sources source criticism, we said, it searches the text for evidence of original sources. The third of these contemporary methodologies is known as form criticism. This identifies short units of text and seeks to identify the original setting. Form criticism is a contemporary methodology that identifies short units of biblical text and seeks to identify the original setting. Each of these is primarily historical and precompositional in its concern. However, let us look at literary criticism. It's one of the contemporary methodologies utilized in biblical criticism. Literary criticism, on the other hand, focuses on the literary structure, authorial purpose of the author, and readers' response to the text through methods such as rhetorical criticism, canonical criticism, and narrative criticism. In other words, literary criticism itself makes use of rhetorical criticism, canonical criticism, narrative criticism. And so, it is safe to say biblical criticism is an umbrella term for those methods of studying the Bible that avoid dogma and bias by applying non-sectarian reason-based judgment, and the attempt to reconstruct history according to contemporary understanding. And we can simply say it uses the grammar, structure, development, and relationship of development of language to identify such characteristics as the Bible literary structure, its genre, its context, its meaning, authorship, and origin. And we have seen clearly that biblical criticism realizes four contemporary methodologies: textual criticism, source criticism, and form criticism, and literary criticism. While literary criticism itself makes use of rhetorical criticism, canonical criticism, and narrative criticism. We may want to talk briefly about the origin and growth of biblical criticism. Biblical criticism began as an aspect of the rise of modern culture in the West. Some scholars claim that its roots reached back to the Reformation, but most agree it grew out of the German Enlightenment. German Pietism played a role in its development, as did British Deism, with its greatest influences being nationalism and Protestant scholarship. The Enlightenment age and its skepticism of biblical and ecclesiastical authority ignited questions concerning the historical basis for the man Jesus, separately from traditional theological views concerning him. This quest for the Jesus of history began in biblical criticism earliest stages, reappeared in the 19th century, and again in the 20th, remaining a major occupation of biblical criticism on and off for over 200 years. In the late 20th and early 21st century, biblical criticism was influenced by a wide range of additional academic disciplines and theoretical perspectives, changing it from a primarily historical approach to a multidisciplinary field. In a field long dominated by white male Protestants, non-white scholars, women, and those from the Jewish and Catholic traditions became prominent voices. Globalization brought a broader spectrum of worldviews into the field, and other academic disciplines as diverse as Near Eastern studies, psychology, anthropology, and sociology form new methods of biblical criticism, such as social scientific criticism and psychological biblical criticism. Meanwhile, postmodernism and post-critical interpretation began questioning biblical criticism's role and function. At this juncture, we will take a look at one of our popular Nigerian scholars, Dr. Michael Aja of National Open University of Nigeria, of the Department of Christian Theology. He has this to say in his work. Concept: biblical criticism refers to the techniques employed by biblical scholars in interpreting a given text of the Bible in order to ascertain their original wording, the nature of their composition, their sources, date, authorship, and the like. Biblical criticism is neither a derogatory term nor a value judgment. It is a descriptive, generally brandished proudly by those to whom it is applied. Criticism here refers to the exercise of an expert sense of judgment about the text and should not be confused with criticism in the sense of making negative statements. Technically, biblical criticism simply refers to the scholarly approach of studying, evaluating, and critically assessing the Bible as literature in order to understand it better. The view of Aja here is that biblical criticism is a scholarly undertaking that entails studying, evaluating, and critically assessing the Bible as literature in order to understand it better. We had mentioned some of the modern critical methodologies employed by biblical criticism. Somehow, they could be grouped into higher criticism or lower criticism. For example, for Aja, biblical criticism in particular, higher criticism deals with why and how the books of the Bible were written, while lower criticism deals with the actual teachings of each author or authors. The word criticism must be one of the all-time least appropriate religious terms. Theologians do not engage in actual criticism, at least as the word is commonly understood. Rather, they analyze the Bible in order to understand it better. And so this point should be borne in mind. And so we can simply say the role ascribed to biblical criticism depends to a large extent on our understanding of the nature of Scripture, whether or not it is a divine book or a human one. While issues of dating and authorship are very important in understanding the message of the structure, we are encouraged not to spend all our time on them. Discussion on them should be kept in perspective for obvious reasons, at least simply to understand the Bible better. And so in this unit, we've been able to examine the concept of biblical criticism and its parallel gospel criticism in the tradition of Jesus. We said it is the umbrella theme of methods of studying the Bible to avoid dogma and bias and to reconstruct history We also identify 4 categories of contemporary methodology for doing biblical criticism. We mention textual criticism, which examines text and its manuscript to identify what the original text will have said. We mention source criticism, which searches for text and its evidence to show original sources. We mention form criticism, which identifies short units of text and seeks to identify the original setting. We finally mention literary criticism, which focuses on literary structure, authorial purpose, and reader's response to the text, and employing rhetorical criticism, canonical criticism, and narrative criticism. Finally, we trace the origin and growth of biblical criticism, and we mention the contribution of our Nigerian biblical scholars, Dr. Aja Michael of National Open University, and his contribution to our knowledge and understanding of biblical criticism. Thank you for listening.